Before we begin, the name is placed on the top right side of the screen. Lucia, at the age of 20, rises to the rank of captain in the Imperial Knights, earning the infamous nickname the Black Monster for her ruthless and ingenious executions on the battlefield. When she arrives at the royal palace, the announcement of the Black Monster Knight sends a shiver of terror through the maids. As she walks through the hall, her presence alone silences the murmurs of the gathered nobles. She introduces herself to the king simply as Lucia, captain of the Black Knights. A murmur spreads through the court, whispers of her severed ties with her family, speculation that she used her own money to forge her path. 5 years pass, and now, standing before the king once more, Lucia is 25. The king observes her with a discerning eye, remarking that she looks more dignified than before. Yet her sharp tongue remains unchanged. She, in turn, notes that the king himself has aged over these years. With a knowing smile, the king acknowledges that her manner has not softened. Still, he does not dwell on it. Instead, he calls upon her to demonstrate the results of her 5 years of training, for she was already an exceptional warrior. Now she stands on the brink of an unparalleled achievement, the 4th sword master of the continent. There are 3 existing sword masters, one in each of the 2 allied nations, and the strongest swordsman of the empire, the Grand Marshal. However, the empire faces a critical loss once the Grand Marshal retires. To maintain its military strength and ensure its dominance, the emperor himself had ordered Lucia to train relentlessly for 5 years, intending for her to become the youngest sword master in history. The king, full of confidence in her abilities, eagerly anticipates the moment she unveils her crimson aura, the mark of a true master. But to his utter astonishment, Lucia, without hesitation, states that she is here to request parental leave. At first, the king laughs, unable to take her words seriously. Lucia, the unshakable fortress, the warrior who never flinched at noble affairs, the densest of the dense, asking for parental leave? The very idea is absurd. 5 years is a long time, he muses, and perhaps even someone like Lucia could have changed. Still, he dismisses it as a joke. However, Lucia does not waver. In a calm, low tone, she clarifies that her child is already 5 years old. A heavy silence falls over the room. The king, initially convinced that she must be lying, soon finds himself hesitating. He scrutinizes her face for any sign of deception, but finds none. Ro is too stunned to even talk now. Realization dawns upon him. Lucia is not joking. The day before her audience with the king, Lucia wakes with a start, certain that she had drawn her last breath. Yet, against all reason, she is still alive. Once, long ago, Lucia was the first and last sword master of the continent to rise at the young age of 92. Without noble blood to back her name, she carved her own path through sheer skill, earning the title of Grand Marshal and accomplishing feats beyond count. And then, for reasons unknown to the world, she abandoned the imperial court. She disappeared into the mountains, awaiting death itself. But death never came. She recalls the sensation she felt just before waking, the unmistakable presence of death closing in on her. Yet she still breathes. Perhaps it was merely her imagination, but deep down, she knows it was real. Disappointed, she acknowledges her failure. Even in death, she could not succeed. She reaches for her sword, intending to place it back on the rack, but instead it flies into the ceiling with unnatural force. She stares at it in confusion. Had she really thrown it that hard? Her gaze drifts to the ceiling, and for the first time she notices an intricate drawing. It looks strangely familiar. A knock at the door pulls her from her thoughts. It is Beryl. He calls for her, telling her that if she is ready, she should come out. The name catches her off guard. Beryl Altortu, the captain of the Black Knights. The realization is unsettling. This mountain range is the most treacherous region in the Empire, a place where only beings of extraordinary power can tread. Beryl, as skilled as he may be, is not of sword master caliber. If he has come here alone, how? She steps outside. Before her stands a gathering of knights, all clad in imperial armor, their postures stiff with formality. One man bows deeply, greeting her with unwavering respect. Lucia stares at him, stunned beyond words. Lucia looks at the boy standing before her, his head bowed in respect. He reminds her so much of Beryl when he was younger that for a moment she wonders if this could be his son. The thought unsettles her. Had Beryl gone before her, leaving behind a child? The possibility weighs on her as she takes in the boy's confused expression. When he addresses her as captain, she speaks aloud, telling him there's no need for such formality, just as his father used to do. She adds that if he has come here to fetch her for the funeral, then it is simply too dull. The boy seems to struggle to process what he is hearing, his mind working through her words. Lucia, brushing aside his reaction, states that she will get ready and join them in a moment. Beryl, watching her, seems on the verge of tears. She doesn't understand what he is doing, but she doesn't dwell on it. Instead, she steps into her room. She is still in her pajamas and needs to change. However, as she catches her reflection in the mirror, a sudden shock grips her. The face staring back at her is not the one she expects. It is the face of her youth, the body she had in her 20s. Her breath catches. Has she finally lost her mind? Before she can fully process the sight before her, Beryl speaks again from outside the door. He tells her that the king has sent a letter, summoning her to the palace tomorrow. The information confounds her further. It has been 40 years since she left the Imperial Knights. There is no reason for the young emperor to even know her name. Something is wrong. As she pulls off her clothes to change, another realization crashes over her. Her body bears no scars. The deep, lasting wounds from the Battle of Herban Valley are gone. The scar from the beast she fought in the Fallio Mountains is missing. Even the monstrous wound from the rugged mountain range, the one she had carried as a mark of survival, is nowhere to be found. Her right shoulder, which had once borne a jagged scar, is now smooth. She stumbles out of her room, her eyes darting around. Only now does she take in her surroundings properly, and what she sees sends another wave of confusion through her. The place is unfamiliar at first, but as she takes a closer look, she recognizes it. It is the dormitory of the Imperial Training Camp, the very place where she spent 20 years of her life. Turning to Beryl, she demands to know the year. He tells her it is the 5th year of the new Empire calendar. Everything suddenly clicks into place. She has returned to the past. The weight of this revelation crushes her. Year 5 of the new Empire calendar. This was the year she became a sword master. Her hands tremble slightly as tears threaten to gather in her eyes, a reaction not just to the overwhelming situation, but also to the vision she saw the night before. The one regret she has carried all these years rushes back to her mind. That child, she remembers that child vividly. At the 3rd training ground of the Imperial Palace, she recalls what is to come. Tomorrow morning, she will have to report the results of her training to the king. Following that, she will be given a top priority mission. Before her regression, she had received the mission without knowing its true nature. The order from the king had mentioned nothing about a saintess. She had believed she was merely escorting a runaway noble child to the temple. But the reality had been far darker. That mission had not been about protection, it had been the beginning of something far more sinister. The saintess had been sealed away in a brutal, inhumane manner. In the past, she had not questioned her orders. But now, having lived through the consequences, she knows the truth. As the new empire rose, so did the black corruption foretold in the prophecy. It rotted the land, brought forth famine, and foreshadowed the continent's demise. Amidst this chaos, the prophecy predicted the emergence of the saintess. With her, a sacred tree appeared, rapidly restoring nature and bringing prosperity to the empire. That was the story told to the people. But it had all been a lie. When Lucia came to her senses, she had secretly obtained classical documents from the temple, documents she had only been able to access after becoming the Grand Marshal. These records contained chilling details about the prophecy and the saintess. Her birth date, her black hair, even the exact date of her awakening were all recorded with disturbing precision. But among these details was something even more horrifying. The saintess had not been protected by the sacred tree. She had been sealed within it. The Empire had extracted the saintess's life force, using it to maintain their prosperity. They had sealed her alive, forcing her power to be drained for their benefit. Now, with the knowledge of what is to come, Lucia can see the truth clearly. The prophecy had never mentioned the sacred tree. Someone had orchestrated this scheme to steal the saintess's power for their own gain. And she, Lucia, had been the one to lead the child to her death. Even though she had taken on that mission without knowing the full truth, the guilt still consumes her. She cannot accept a world where those who live in luxury do so at the cost of the saintess's life. That is why she left everything behind. That is why she lived in the forest, trying to escape the weight of her actions. But whether this is her will, her fate, or another cruel trick played by the gods, she no longer cares. This time she will protect the child. This time she will atone for her sins. She will do whatever it takes. The next morning, she is on a boat approaching a port near the capital. She scans her surroundings, recalling the past. Back then, she had been too focused on the mission to notice the details, but now she understands. This place, it must be underground, a place run by smugglers. She had not realized it before, but now it makes sense. To think that she had been sent to find a child in a place like this. She forces herself to focus. She needs to find the child. Then she stops. A sickening stench of rotting corpses fills her senses. This place, there is no way someone could be living here. Her eyes land on a padlock on a rundown warehouse door. Unlike the building, the lock is pristine, gleaming as if someone maintains it daily. Fury surges through her. Without hesitation, she draws her sword and strikes. The lock shatters and the door swings open. Inside, cages fill the space, lined with all sorts of birds, exotic, valuable creatures. The sight disgusts her, but she pushes forward. Then she hears it. A faint heartbeat. The sound of anxious, restless breathing. It is coming from within the warehouse. She runs, her pulse pounding as she throws open the door. And just like that, she meets that child once again. Just like that, fate gives her a second chance. Lucia stands stiffly, staring at the little girl in front of her, completely out of her depth. A child. A tiny, delicate creature with big, round eyes looking up at her, with an expression so open and trusting that it makes Lucia feel like she's been handed a ticking time bomb. She has no idea what to do. Has she ever even had a proper conversation with a child this young before? No, she realizes she hasn't. She has never attended a wedding, never visited any of her friends' children, and the youngest person she had ever picked up was a soldier from the battlefield, and even he had been older than this little girl. Even the maids in the manor where she lived had been older. She is completely, utterly clueless, and then, just as she is still floundering for a single useful thought, the child speaks. "Mom." Lucia chokes. She stares at the child. The child stares back. For a long moment, neither of them moves. Then finally, Lucia remembers how to use words. She clears her throat, making it very clear that she is not the girl's mother. She extends her hand, stating in a firm voice that she is here to save her. The child, Annie, must have mistaken her for her mother simply because they both have black hair. After all, black-haired people are rare on this continent. That must be the reason, right? Lucia pushes away the uncomfortable feeling in her chest and tells Annie that this place is dangerous and that she will take her somewhere safe. But to her growing confusion, Annie doesn't move. The child just sits there, her head lowered, her small hands clutching at the fabric of her clothes. Lucia blinks. She told her she's here to save her, didn't she? That's what kids want, isn't it? Safety? Comfort? Warm food? She just offered her all of those things. So why isn't she moving? Lucia tries again. "Come with me." But Annie's voice is small and hesitant when she finally responds. She says that she has to stay here. Lucia frowns. Annie's voice grows even quieter as she explains. If she leaves, she will get hurt. She can't go. It hurts. Lucia's stomach turns. This child, did she find her way here on her own? And more importantly, is she hurt? Lucia looks at her carefully. At first glance, Annie doesn't seem to have any visible wounds, but still, she is a saintess, a child chosen by the gods themselves. She was able to survive even after being sealed away for years, purely because of the divine strength she was born with. And yet, she says she's in pain. A heady feeling settles in Lucia's chest. She pulls the blanket away from the child, ignoring Annie's quiet protests. She expects to see some gruesome wound, something obvious, something she can fix. But instead, there is nothing. No injuries, no blood, no bruises. And yet golden light seeps from Annie's body. Lucia stills. That light, divine power. Annie, seemingly unaware of Lucia's alarm, simply shakes her head and says there's no wound. She says it doesn't hurt anymore. She calls it a perfect circle of mana. Lucia's fingers twitch. A thought forms in her mind. She glances at the wall. Her sharp eyes trace over it, following a pattern only she would recognize. They did this to confirm Annie's divine power. A deep, seething anger wells up inside her. These bastards, they hurt her. They took a child meant to bring salvation, and treated her like a tool, like an experiment, like something they could break apart and put back together. Lucia grits her teeth so hard that she can hear the creak of her own jaw. These people, these monsters, deserve to be torn apart. Lucia forces herself to swallow the burning rage in her throat and kneels down to Annie's level. She asks her how she ended up here. Who are her parents? Where did she live before? Annie hesitates before answering. She used to live in an orphanage. Her parents aren't here with her. Lucia's mind goes blank for a second. She had expected a name, a family to hunt down, someone she could find and make pay. But instead, Annie has no one. Lucia swallows. She forces herself to stay calm and apologizes softly. And as she does, she suddenly wonders, what was her own childhood like? The memories come unbidden. Her mother died the moment she was born. Her father, an emperor who had barely acknowledged her existence, did not visit her until she was of age. The maids in the palace, the nannies, the servants, none of them ever spoke to her with warmth. She had thought, for a long time, that this was normal. That this numbness, this silence, was something everyone experienced, until she met the other knights, until she saw them laugh, argue, fight, and care for one another. Until she realized how wrong she had been, but by then, solitude had already become a part of her. Lucia looks at Annie and sees herself. But there is one difference. Unlike her, Annie still hopes. She still believes that her parents will come back for her, that someone will save her. Unlike her own lonely life, Annie might still have a chance. Lucia wonders, will she really be able to live an ordinary life under ordinary parents? No, a saintess can never be ordinary. A special child needs special parents. And to protect the saintess, one must be strong, like Lucia. Lucia takes a deep breath and speaks. She tells Annie that they are the same. She, too, grew up without parents. She doesn't know what they are supposed to be like. But there is one way to save her. They will become family. Annie's eyes widen slightly. Her voice is faint, uncertain. Family? Lucia nods. She will become her mother. And then voices echo from outside the warehouse. Angry, furious voices. The men who kept Annie locked away have realized something is wrong. Lucia tenses. The voices grow louder. Someone shouts, "Who the hell broke the lock?" Lucia's eyes sharpen. She tells Annie to open all the cages. The plan is simple. The second those bastards step inside, chaos. Annie hesitates but nods. The door bursts open. The men storm in, their eyes darting around in search of the intruder. And then, every single cage in the warehouse swings open at once. Storm of birds explodes into the air. Feathers, screeching, clawing. The men barely have time to react before they are being attacked by their own cargo. Lucia doesn't hesitate. She grabs Annie, holding her tightly, and bolts. They rush through the chaos, slipping through the shadows, leaving the shouts and curses behind. Lucia takes Annie with her to her dorm. She has already brought her inside, yet Annie has not moved a single step from the rug. It makes Lucia wonder, does Annie think her gloves are dirty? Curious, Lucia asks if Annie wants to wash up. Without waiting for a response, she prepares a hot bath for her. Once everything is ready, she calls Annie to come inside the room. Annie moves carefully, taking slow, deliberate steps toward the bath. She enters the room and quietly closes the door behind her. Watching this, Lucia finds herself wondering about her own childhood. Did she used to bathe alone at that age? It was too long ago, and she can no longer recall. The thought lingers for a moment before she checks the time. It is already time to leave. Lucia calls out, asking Annie if she has finished washing up. A small face peeks from behind the door, but before Lucia can say anything further, Beryl interrupts. He tells Lucia that they need to leave immediately. She asks for a moment, then turns back to Annie. Kneeling slightly to be at eye level, she tells the girl that she will be stepping out for a while and that Annie needs to stay here. At this, Annie nods, her expression unreadable. Satisfied, Lucia leaves. Inside the carriage, Lucia glances at Beryl and suddenly remembers. During this time, Beryl's nephew was born. Looking at him, she asks how his nephew is doing. Beryl's face lights up with excitement. He is pleased that Lucia remembers, and he eagerly tells her that his nephew is now 5 years old. His joy is clear, but after a moment, his tone shifts, becoming quieter. Almost hesitantly, he asks her something about raising a child. Lucia listens, thoughtful. Beryl explains that his sister had taken maternity leave. She asks if his sister managed well. Beryl nods, telling her that his sister has now returned and is working as an administrator in the White Mage division. Lucia finds herself considering this. Meanwhile, Beryl observes her, unable to stop himself from thinking about how much she has changed. His captain, the Swordmaster, now speaks with the confidence of a seasoned veteran. It makes him wonder just how grueling her training must have been for her to reach this point. He sighs, thinking that he still has a long way to go before he can reach her level. Lucia, however, is focused on something else entirely. She asks more about maternity leave, her mind turning over an idea. Beryl reminds her of something important. She was the one who had secured that maternity leave with the White Captain back then. Leon Lewis, her greatest rival. There was a time when they had dueled, with the winner granted the right to make a request. She had won that fight, but she had no particular wish of her own. So instead, she had used her victory to secure maternity leave for Beryl's sister. A small smile tugs at Lucia's lips. Maternity leave. Perhaps it is not such a bad idea after all. She cannot simply stop working altogether to stay by Annie's side. What Annie needs is a safe environment, even when Lucia is not present, and to ensure that she must eliminate everyone involved in the saintess sealing plan. To do that, remaining within the Imperial Knights is her best option. It is the most efficient way to gather intel. And then there is the Control Stone. Hiding Annie's divine power is essential, but even a genius like Keith would need at least half a year to refine the stolen stone from the temple. Half a year. Maternity leave. The idea settles in her mind, and she realizes it is not a bad plan at all. When she brings it up to the king, his reaction is immediate and explosive. He is furious, his voice rising as he demands to know if she is joking. Does she really expect him to believe that she has been raising a child all this time, right there in the training grounds? Lucia does not hesitate. She lies. She tells him that yes, that is exactly what she has been doing. The king's anger does not subside. Instead, he presses further, asking her about the father. She answers with a fabricated story. The father, she claims, was a herbalist. He had been gathering medicinal plants when he fell from a cliff and died. In his lifeless hand there had been no rare herbs, only common grass. That was the story she had been told. The king's fury only intensifies. He is livid, unable to believe what he is hearing. She does not even look like a single woman raising a child. She looks like a grieving widow. He refuses to accept it. There is no way that Lucia, of all people, could have had a child and still become a swordmaster. He accuses her of abandoning her duties, of using the Imperial training grounds for personal reasons. He calls it a serious offense. Lucia scoffs. The king is acting intimidated, but it does not suit him. Despite having no power of his own, he always insists on them accompanying him. She can see it clearly. He desperately wants to project an image of authority, and yet he cannot even hold the crystal glass in his hand properly. It is too heavy for him. Was it alcohol that took him down in her past life? With a single flick of her wrist, she slashes the glass he is holding. The king is taken aback as the glass splits cleanly in two. The wine spills, but what shocks him more is how it was done. A single quill. Not a sword, not even a blade, but a mere quill. Even among sword masters, controlling an unstable sword aura requires something as durable as mithril. But to imbue such precise power into a quill, it is unheard of. The king stares, wide-eyed, realizing that Lucia has surpassed the level of a swordmaster. Excitement replaces his anger. He declares that he always knew she would become something great. Lucia, however, remains unfazed. She states her terms minus 100% paid parental leave. Lodging at the training ground will be maintained. Then, almost offhandedly, she mentions something else. She has adjusted the size of the glass to match his age. The implication is clear. It is laughable for a king to be unable to hold his own glass. The king ponders her words. Is she suggesting he cut down on drinking? Lucia does not wait for an answer. She returns to her dorm, noting that the meeting took longer than expected. Her thoughts shift. When the king eventually learns the truth, that he vouched for a saintess, he will undoubtedly be furious. But it is only fair. It is his responsibility after all. When she arrives, she looks around, searching for Annie. But the girl is nowhere to be found. Is she still in the bath? Lucia goes to check, and sure enough, Annie is still in the bathroom. The girl is trying to reach her clothes, but as she stretches, she loses balance and nearly slips. Lucia moves immediately, catching her just in time. She steadies Annie and asks why she is still here. Tears well up in Annie's eyes as she whispers a single word. Towel. Lucia realizes her mistake. She had hung the towel too high for Annie to reach. The girl has been standing here, naked and waiting, all this time. Feeling guilty, Lucia hands Annie the towel, but the moment she does, Annie suddenly starts crying. Lucia is caught off guard. Why is Annie crying so suddenly? Did she rub her too hard while drying her? She thinks back. As a child, she never dried herself. Her maids always did it for her. Even in her 90s, she never had to do this herself. And yet, here she is, preparing to raise a child. Looking at Annie, she realizes, this is going to be much more difficult than she thought. Lucia has already saved the saintess and even made the decision to raise her as her own child. However, the situation she finds herself in now is far from ideal. Annie has barely touched her food, and Lucia, unaware of this fact, is beginning to grasp just how difficult and costly raising a child truly is. The only relief she has is knowing that she has burned all the documents related to the saintess, ensuring that no one has discovered the child's identity. So far, no orders have come from the king regarding the saintess, and there are still 11 years left before she is meant to awaken. Until then, Lucia must use the Control Stone to suppress Annie's powers while also tracking down and eliminating everyone involved in the plan to seal her away. But for now, her most pressing concern is tomorrow's meal. Ever since her parental leave started, the stipend she used to receive has stopped, and she can no longer afford proper ingredients. Cooking itself has become a challenge. Then there is Annie's sudden remark. In a faint voice, the child tells her to send her back. Lucia is taken aback. She had assumed Annie had followed her because she wanted to live with her. Confused, she asks if Annie wants to return to the orphanage. Annie, however, does not respond immediately. She thinks to herself that she does not want to go back. Having warm food and clean water feels like a dream. But she also wonders if Lucia wants to send her away now because she sees her as useless. Lacking the right words, Annie mutters something about being dirty. Lucia furrows her brows and asks if she is saying that this place is dirty. Looking around, she realizes that Annie might not be wrong. The environment is far from suitable for a child. It is a fair point. But then, unexpectedly, Annie begins to cry. Lucia, exhausted, struggles to understand what has caused this sudden outburst. Retracing the conversation in her mind, she recalls that Annie had said something about being dirty. The only place Annie has been inside Lucia's quarters is the bathroom. Could she be referring to herself? Lucia asks if she means that she has made the bathroom dirty. Annie immediately apologizes, bowing her head in distress. Lucia, the legendary Black Knight, finds herself feeling utterly useless in front of a child. She wonders if there is a proper way to handle this situation. Finally, she makes a firm decision. Sending Annie back is not an option. However, before even considering anything else, she tells the girl that they need to clean this place first. Crying, she adds, will not solve anything. Since Annie is going to live here, she needs to contribute as well. Lucia asks if she knows how to clean. Annie nods. Then hesitantly, she asks where this place is. Lucia tells her that they are within the Imperial Palace. Annie recalls something Nia once told her, that the Imperial Palace is a dazzling place where people never have to worry about their next meal. A paradise. But now, looking at herself, she does not feel dazzling at all. If she does not do housework, she might not be able to meet the dazzling Lucia again. Annie quickly wipes away her tears. She understands that if she keeps crying, she will be seen as nothing more than a troublesome child. She thinks to herself that if she cleans, she might become useful. And if she is useful, perhaps she will be allowed to stay just a little longer. Lucia sighs. For now, they can set this conversation aside. Cleaning the bathroom alone will take quite some time. But Annie, as if desperate, quickly insists that she can do it. She will wash everything. Lucia watches her for a moment, realizing that Annie is a remarkably soft-hearted child. At last, she properly introduces herself. She then tells Annie that while they are here, she must make a promise. She cannot tell anyone about her past at the orphanage. Additionally, she must start calling Lucia Mom as soon as possible. Lucia then asks if her name is indeed Annie. After a brief pause, she suggests they change her name. Before she can decide on one, however, she suddenly hears approaching footsteps. She immediately tenses. No one is supposed to be here. She orders Annie to stay silent and instinctively reaches for her sword. Soon after, she hears the unmistakable sound of a window being opened. Her thoughts race. Could it be an assassin? It would not be the first time an enemy nation has sent someone to test the strength of the new sword master. As the intruder enters through the window, Lucia moves swiftly, pressing the edge of her blade against his neck. The man, unfazed, lets out a small, amused sound and speaks in a familiar, teasing voice. He asks if she intends to lower her sword anytime soon, considering it has already been 5 years. Lucia's grip tightens. She is unable to recognize him immediately, but then he introduces himself, Vernon of the Hidden Division. For a moment, she is caught off guard. If he is truly Vernon, then Vernon, seeing her reaction, laughs, saying that she nearly made him lose his composure. Before she can process this further, another figure jumps in through the window. Spotting Annie, they immediately exclaim in surprise, remarking that there is now a miniature version of Lucia. This newcomer is Olivia, the Black Knight's second ace. A third person follows, landing effortlessly and peering at Annie. He calls her Tiny. This is Heath, the first ace of the Black Knights. All three of them stare at Annie and Lucia in shock. Their resemblance is undeniable. Lucia glares at them and calls them idiots. She demands to know why they are entering through the window when the door works just fine. Vernon chuckles, remarking that, just as Beryl had said, Lucia truly talks like an old woman now. Olivia, tilting her head, asks what happened in the past 5 years to make her sound so ancient. Heath, smirking, joins in and calls her an old woman. Lucia clenches her teeth, recalling that these three have always been this reckless. Yet she also realizes that her way of speaking does, in fact, stand out. She makes a mental note that she needs to fix that. Meanwhile, Olivia, delighted, suddenly lifts Annie and starts swinging her through the air. She beams, clearly enjoying herself, but Annie is too stunned to make a sound. Lucia immediately steps in, taking Annie away from Olivia and asking what exactly she is trying to do. Olivia pouts, insisting that she likes swinging children like this. Lucia sighs. Things have just gotten even more chaotic. Vernon scoffs and confidently says to Olivia that she just made Lucia's daughter hate her and ask her to watch him and take some notes from him. He gives her candy Lucia calls his way too pathetic. And Lucia sees that Annie has fallen asleep on her arms, making her think if all kids fell asleep this early. Lucia says to the three of them she will go and put Annie to bed and orders all three of them to stay where they are. Olivia pouts that it looks like they have made Lucia really pissed. Heath makes it clear for her that it was her fault, not theirs. Vernon suggests Olivia that she probably should make death wish for herself now. Lucia puts Annie to bed. She is glad that Annie doesn't have fever. It must be because her body is strong, because she is a saintess.